time to catch up with Donn McClean about his favourite festive 5 things to enjoy over the period. And I'm sure St Stephen's Day, I'll make sure I got that one right, Donn, is up there with them.
Yeah, look, it's what a day in store, Tom. What a week in store, the 4 days after Christmas Day, starting to say with St Stephen's Day, of course, Boxing Day over there. And on both sides of the Irish Sea, with King George in Britain and the Leopardstown and Limerick festivals here down Royal on Stephen's Day as well. So yeah, so much to look forward to. And we're pretty much going to see most of the top class National Hunt horses on show.
Yeah, absolutely, Donn. And if we sort of start by harking back to some of your favourite King Georges, I know that one of them is the uber-dramatic 2004 renewal for all sorts of reasons that starred the mighty chaser Kicking King. Yeah,
it was a close call for me between Kicking King and Florida Pearl. 3 years earlier, Florida Pearl, lots of drama went with him as well. Of course, Willie Mullins. I think Willie Mullins said at the time, "I'm unlikely to have another horse as good as Florida Pearl." We know that's probably not true. But there was the drama about who was going to ride him. I think Ruby went to Leopardstown. Paul Carberry was in Leopardstown as well. I think Adrian Maguire was on his way to Market Racing with the premise that if it was called off, then he'd get to ride Florida Pearl in front of JP McNamara, and that's exactly what happened. And the drama of him winning it. And I think Florida Pearl as well was the first Irish-trained King George winner since Captain Christie back in the 70s. Captain Christie was trained by Pat Taff, Arkle's rider, who won the King George on Arkle, and of course Tom Taft's dad. And Tom Taft's the trainer of Kicking King. And Kicking King, I suppose I went with him because you say, Tom, the drama that went with it, but also it's the 20th anniversary. It was 20 years ago that Kicking King won the King George, which is quite incredible, really.
Yeah, we can take a look at the race now, actually, Donn, and I'll let you talk through the closing stages because we're about to come towards the final fence, which saw no end of high drama.
Yeah, well, it was a dramatic conclusion, but it was a fairly dramatic race because Barry Geraghty, even though Kicking King wasn't a stalwart stayer, Barry Geraghty had no question about his stamina. Obviously, kicked him on a long way from home. He took it up off first goal, going down the back straight. Here's the final fence. I mean, how he stood up is remarkable. And then you think he's home, but then we have Santa Claus makes a cameo from left field, and Kicking King ignores it all, keeps on going. That's Kingscliff staying on the far side to get the better of his Erty up to just can get home. And we know the King George, we kind of say it's 3 miles on a flat track. If you're going to get 3 miles anywhere, you're going to get it in a King George. But we know that stamina is a big requisite for a King George winner. Kicking King had it. I remember when Kicking King finished second in a Supreme Novices Hurdle. He finished second in an Arkle as well. And after the Arkle, I remember Tom Taft saying, you know, people kind of think, me included, that he was going to be a champion chase contender for the following season. He said no, Gold Cup, he was going up in trip. And Tom Taft always saw him as a Gold Cup potential. He took him 2 King Georges. He won the King George at Sandown the following year as well. Barry coming in with the tricolour. And as well as that, remember the whole drama about the Gold Cup a couple of months or 2.5 months later, because he was ruled out of the Gold Cup through injury. Then he was ruled back in. I think Tom Taft the horse was out in a field beside the driveway, and Tom Taft was driving down the driveway. Some stones kind of jumping up under his car made a noise, and Kicking King took flight in his field, and Tom Taft went, well, that doesn't look like a horse is not ready to run soon, and suddenly he was back in the Gold Cup picture, and we know how that all ended.
Yes, indeed. Reminds me a little bit of Binocular in his champion hurdle bid all those years ago. I remember that he was ruled out of the race and then ruled back in by Nicky Henderson. And of course, he went on to win the champion hurdle in the end. So a few parallels there. Just on that Santa Claus moment, I don't know if you remember, Donn, but the old what happened next segment of Question of Sport, it was one of those moments that was so unlikely and so far-fetched that it would have been one of those choices and options of the 3 that no one actually would have picked because it was almost too ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you pause it going into the final fence and said what happened next, you'd have thought that the what happened next was the mistake that King made at the last and how he survived it. But no, there was more drama to unfold, and I chatting to Barry Geraghty afterwards, he was saying he did see him, he just saw him coming somewhere out of the corner of his eye, the wayward Santa Claus, but he kept going, kept his horse's momentum up, and you can imagine as well after 3 miles, and it was a fairly punishing 3 miles. They went fast, and Kicking King went on from early. I'm sure he was coming towards the end of his tether, and therefore concentration is probably not at a premium for the horse, but he kept on going admirably in the end.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want at the end of a King George is to have someone in a Santa Claus costume going across the track, isn't it? Let's talk about the race this year, Don, the Irish angle in particular. I know that you're a fan of the Chance of Banbridge.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be an interesting race now, isn't it? We have, I think it was just announced this morning that the French horse Le Francais is in, and David Cotin, he's putting in his horse as well, says he's going to be supplemented. Spillane's Tar, it looks like he's going to be supplemented as well, but again, that's ground dependent. So Jimmy Mangan and JP McManus and Frank Barry, they're going to sit down and figure out if they're going to supplement him or not. There's Banbridge unseating Richie Deegan at the final fence in the Hillyway Chase there a couple of weeks ago, and I thought he ran a massive race there, Tommy. He probably had to do something like that because he was disappointing the Portria Chase when he finished down the field behind Found a 50, but to run an Erguiman as close as he did, going to the final fence over a trip that's probably shorter than ideal for Banbridge. He was giving an Erguiman £10 as well, and he's been kind of shortening all the time for the King George since then. He's a 5-1 shot there, as you see. Spillane's Star to be supplemented 92, second favourite behind Grey Dawning. Le Francais, he contracted in price now the last couple of days since it's become apparent that it looks like he's going to run. Corbett's Cross in there as well. He holds his entry. Envoy Alain, what a horse Envoy Alain is. I mean, he's probably towards the upper end of the age range that you look for. He's 10 years old now, and not many 10-year-olds win a King George, but he proved the last day to Enroy that he retained all his enthusiasm in winning the champion chase there again. But Banbridge, I just think he's got plenty in his favour, Tom. The ground is obviously important to him. He was well beaten in the Ryanair Chase whenever the ground was soft there last time. But this is him in the Sylvain Conti Chase at Kempton. His only run at Kempton, and he proved that he could handle the track. That was his first run of the season last year. He's beaten Pic D'Orhy, who's obviously top class horse. He won a Grade 2 race at Ascot before that, and then went on and won the Ascot Chase next time Pic D'Orhy did. So it was a good performance by Banbridge to beat Pic D'Orhy. That was obviously over 2.5 miles. And it's not certain that he's going to stay 3 miles, so it is a little bit of a question mark about him. And his one run over 3 miles was in the Sefton Hurdle at Aintree, in which he was well beaten. But that wasn't his running; it was the race at Aintree after he'd won the Martin Pipe Hurdle. So I think I don't think you can conclude from that he doesn't stay 3 miles. And the Martin Pipe Hurdle, that's a 2.5 miles. Obviously, it's a stamina race. The horses who win a Martin Pipe, they normally get further in trip. Don Poley won it, Sir Deschamps won it. Galloping Deschamps, of course, he won it. So it is a race that does tend to foster horses who go further in trip. That said, Banbridge dropped back 10 to 2 miles and won the Arkle Trial the following November at Cheltenham. So he's got pace as well. But just as an 8-year-old now rising 9, if he does stay the trip, then I think he's going to be a big player in the race.
Yeah, and I think significant pertinence needs to be ascribed to the question mark about that trip, doesn't it? Because he's a very versatile horse in his own right, 2 to 2.5. But 3 miles is a question, as you say. However, I do think he's talented enough to get away with it, even in a race like the King George. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do over that 3-mile trip, and perhaps beyond in the future. Who knows, Don? The Savills Chase, I wanted to bring this one up as well, because this looks like an absolute belter, doesn't it? It usually is, but I feel like this year we have a sort of clash between different generations of chases, and it looks quite mouth-watering at the moment. Yeah,
that's exactly it, Tom. Like, we had it in the John Durkin Chase where Spillane's Tower and Factifile, they were last season's novices, Grade 1 winners, top class last season novices, stepping up into open company in the John Durkin Chase. And, obviously you never know until they meet how they're going to fare, because we don't have too many collateral lines of form between the novices and the open, top class open horses from the previous season. But they really stepped up, the two of them. Factifile obviously won the John Durkin. Spillane's Tower ran a massive race to finish second, and he was fairly weak in the market beforehand as well, Jimmy Mangan's horse. But Galloping Deschamps was third. Fast or Slow kind of dropped out of it then to finish fourth. There was a bit of a gap between the first 3 home and Fast or Slow. It's a pity for Martin Brattle and the Mulryans that we're missing Fast or Slow from the remainder of the season, because he is a miss. He's definitely going to be notable by his absence. But here's the 2 JP McManus horses. See how close they get. It did look like Spillane's Tower on the right with the Jack Kennedy with the star in his cap. It looked like he was coming to win his race, but Factifile battled back really well on the far side under Mark Walsh and got home by whatever it was, a half length or a neck in the end. Like, what a race between 2 second season chasers, last season's top novices. Spillane's Tower won the Willow Worm Gold Cup at Ferryhouse over 2.5 miles, then went down and won the Grade 1 Stayers race at the Punchestown Festival over 3 miles. Active of course, won the Brown Advisory Chase. So they both came different routes through the novice season, but they met there, and they got the better of Galopin Des Champs. I suppose in the back of my mind, Tom, is the fact that, look, Galopin Des Champs, he's the reigning champ, he's a dual Gold Cup winner, he's only 8 rising 9, and okay, he was beaten in the John Durkan Chase, but he was beaten in the John Durkan Chase last season as well, and then came on and to Leopardstown, and here we see him did this. I mean, this was fairly breathtaking, really. I was watching this race from the rail, just on this side of the final fence, and the way that he picked up, you're looking at them head on there as a kind of a worm's eye view. You're not so sure how far in front he is, but when he jumped the last, and then it took an age for the others to jump the last, and you can see what it meant to Paul Townend, and he obviously got some kick out of that, and I suppose part of that as well was that he was able to bounce back from defeat in the John Durkan Chase last year. And look at the Savills Chase, it's a massive race. And as you said earlier on, Tom, this year in particular, it seems to be really bringing together. There's a real wealth of top class staying chasers, and now it's kind of the next step. The John Durkan Chase that panned out. The novices got the better of the seasoned pros in that race, but now, like Galopin Des Champs, he's run 5 times over fences at Leopardstown. He's won 5 times. I think he's run 5 times at Punchestown as well, and he's only won once. So he's probably a better horse at Leopardstown than he is anywhere else. It's the time of year as well that he's probably going to progress from the John Durkan Chase to Leopardstown, and obviously he's probably going to be better over the 3-mile trip at the Savills Chase than he was over the 2.5-mile trip, and not even 2.5-mile trip of the John Durkan Chase. So it's just going to be brilliant to see them taking each other on again.
Yeah, I feel like we've got an embarrassment of riches, really, at the moment, haven't we, in terms of the 3-mile chasing ranks. And I have to say, Don, just watching that Galopin Des Champs performance back, it was really quite something. It was probably the best chase performance I've ever seen over the Christmas period. And I know that Corto Star was very impressive in his couple of King Georges, and if we go back, the likes of Desert Orchid. But there was something about the way that Galopin Des Champs hit the line in that Savills Chase that I thought was just absolutely breathtaking, it has to be said. Let's move on, shall we, Don, to perhaps the next generation of staying chasers. And this is the Grade 1 over 3 miles in Ireland. And Ampere Pass is stepping up to this trip for the first time over fences. I don't know about you, Don. I wasn't that taken by his chasing debut. I thought he was off the bridle from quite an early stage. In the end, he got the job done. I don't know, I wasn't particularly visually impressed.
Yeah, I was working that day, Tom, and watching it live, there were definitely... for me, it was a very short period of time within the race where you thought, geez, he might be in trouble now. Like, he was a long odds-on shot. And Paul Townend did have to give him a squeeze just on the run to the home turn. But once he did, for me, he whatever, maybe, I don't know if he just needed waking up or if he was losing concentration. But once he did pick up, he's gone to the line really strongly. He's come away from Staffordshire Not There, and that was 2 miles, 5.5 furlongs. So, we know that he's 2.5 miles last season. That was a good trip for him. He's the entry hurdle winner. He went on to Sandown and won the select hurdle as well over a wee bit further. So it's not surprising that he's kind of morphing into a staying chaser. But it was the kind of the latter part of the race that was the impressive part for me. It took him, his jumping warmed up nicely as the race progressed, and also just that part in the race when just looked like he might be in a little bit of trouble on the run to the home turn. But that kind of worry for me anyway. Maybe you're different, Tom. It didn't last too long for me. It was then whenever Paul Townend gave him a squeeze, he really picked up and went to the line strongly. And you ally that to his class hurdling form. He knocked heads against State Man a couple of times last season. Wasn't able to get the better of him, but he got to Aintree and stepped up to 2.5 miles. And he was obviously, it was one of the finishes of the season in the Aintree hurdling. He came out the best of it. And then I think he's probably going to have to improve, Tom, if he's going to win the Leopardstown Chase, or the Racing Post long distance chase as it's called now. It's the old Neville Hotels Chase as we used to know it. And it's a deep race as well. Like, a couple of these horses are entered in the Faugheen Chase at Limerick as well, so they've got options. And obviously we're not certain which way they're going to go yet. But Croke Park, he was very good in winning the Drinmore. I thought Sam Ewing was brilliant on him, just stacked them up in front. And Croke Park, he's a real kind of staying, even from last season, he was always a staying horse, and he won his beginner's chase over 3 miles at Ferryhouse, over an extended 3 miles. So to drop back and trip for a Durkan Chase, for a Drinmore Chase, and for Sam Ewing kind of rode him for pace, and he was able to quicken. Like, he did have the run of the race, but he still had to show pace in order to see off Heartwood and Firefox, and it was a big performance by Croke Park. And I think he'll be even better when he gets a better or a greater test of stamina. Better Days Ahead is in there as well, and he's a really likeable horse. We're back to the Martin Pipe Hurdle, last year's Martin Pipe Hurdle. He didn't look a likely winner going to the final flight in the Martin Pipe Hurdle, but he stayed on really well. And when the stamina kicked in, he beat Slade Steele on his chasing debut at Navan the last day. He jumped well. That was over 2.5 miles. He's another horse who's probably going to be better over further as well. And then you've got Stellar Story of Search for Glory if they're in it as well. So yeah, this kind of novice staying chase division, it's bubbling up really nicely.
Yeah, it really is. I think Croke Park looks an ideal type, has all the hallmarks of a sort of Irish national type in time, it has to be said. What I would say about Better Days Ahead, Don, is I think this is a horse of significant potential, but I think he might go the Limerick route. Wherever he does go, I think he's got a massive chance. I was really taken by that first performance over fences, and I think he did nothing but improve over hurdles last year. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Better Days Ahead might do. I just feel as though they might go for the shorter trip at Limerick instead, that Grade 1 for he novice chase. But we shall see, of course. Finally, Don, I wanted to chat to you about one of your big fancies over the course of the Christmas period, a horse called Hello Neighbour.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him over hurdles, Tom. Look, the juvenile hurdle division is going to change an awful lot in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months, but this fella, he's run twice on the flat. Gavin Cromwell trains him, and he won over 2 miles and 6 furlongs on his debut at Navan. Then he came on to Roscommon, and this is him winning, dropping down a trip to 10.5 furlongs, and he's just quickened up really well. None of his 4 rivals from this race have run since. But the runner-up, Cheeky Wink, who's staying on towards the near side in the Barnan stud colours in the red and green halves, Johnny Murtagh's horse, she's got a rating of 85, and you can see how well he's beaten her, probably over a trip that's well short of his best. And he's kind of, I guess since then, or maybe even since before then, he's been talked of as, Gavin Cromwell was always going over hurdles with him. Gavin had a press day the other day, and he just seemed to be very, very happy with Hello Neighbour. Looking forward to seeing him making his hurdling debut. He said that he schooled well. So yeah, we're dying to see him now making his debut over hurdles. He does have the option. He's in the Grade 2 hurdle on, I think that's on St. Stephen's Day, and he's in the maiden hurdle as well. So if he runs in the Grade 2, he could take on Willie Duhowell, who was Triumph Hurdle favourite until he was beaten there the other day by Naturally Nimble. He's in it as well. Marcy is an interesting French horse of Willie Mullins as well. So that Grade 2 juvenile hurdle, again, it's going to be a learning experience. We're going to learn a lot more about the pecking order of the juvenile hurdlers with a long way to go. But yeah, Hello Neighbour, he's a horse that I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, very much so, Don. Can't wait to see what all those horses that you've mentioned can do. Just finally, Don, in your opinion, if you had to nominate one race or horse you're looking forward to seeing the most over the Christmas period, what would it be?
Yeah, look, there are so many. The King George, it's always top. I'm just dying to see how that develops, and the Savills. I suppose those 2 races, Tom, the Savills Chase on this side of the water, the King George on the far side, on your side of the water, and just seeing how the staying chases are going to continue to develop as we move through the season.
Yeah, absolutely, Don. Thanks very much indeed for your time. As always, it is the most wonderful time of the year in more ways than one for all of us racing fans, and I hope you enjoy all the action over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Thanks, Tom.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.